Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. It is Thursday, but because it's New Year, we are doing a Wildcard episode due to availability. We thought, as it is the 1st of January at time of recording and bringing in the new year, Happy New Year to everyone, that we would have a little look back over 2024, maybe to some happier times rather than the tail end. And yeah, let's maybe speculate a bit on what 2025 might bring for Saints. My name is Greg Elliott. As always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Zach Finch. How you doing, Zach? You recovered from your festivities?
For the sake of this podcast and potential future sponsors, yeah, I'm fine. Unless those sponsors are Jameson's, in which case I had a fantastic evening yesterday. But no, really, probably the first time in about a decade I've done anything for New Year's Eve. Hung out with my best mate. It was good fun. I went for some food, had some drinks. It was
sounds perfect.
Stayed up far too late for a man in his 30s, put it that way. So yeah, kind of recovered now. I've had a nap. I feel a lot better. So yeah, looking forward to. So I've realised football's creeping up this weekend because I have no idea what day it is. I know that we're back to work for 2 random days from tomorrow, which is when you'll be hearing this. So
yeah, that's it.
Bizarre.
Back to work blues coming in. I don't know if it's better or worse to start work on a Thursday. Like it kind of, I guess you don't have to start the year off with the negative of it being Monday, but also it just feels weird, right?
Yeah, it's just a bit strange, isn't it? Like, I don't know. By the time you start to get into the swing of things, you realise it's about 1 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, and it's a bit too late then.
Yeah,
but I'm sure
we move into this horrible period of our life where there's not football and darts every day to keep you occupied.
No, and then like for me personally, I think I don't get any more annual leave until like April, so I'm looking forward to 4 months on the trot. It's going to be fun. Hey ho, it will fly by, I'm sure.
So let's get to it. A year in review, 2024. Safe to say it was a bit of a roller coaster. But we started off the year, if you cast your mind back, in some reasonably good form. We wrapped up 2023 with a 5-0 on Boxing Day, and then moved into New Year's Day, and we drew with Norwich, not the best, but then had back-to-back 4-0 wins against Walsall in the FA Cup, and then Sheffield Wednesday in the Championship. And this was really when we started to think we might be challenging for that second automatic promotion spot.
Yeah, you missed a 2-1 win against Plymouth Argyle in the middle as well on the 29th. So yeah, it was all right. You're right, and then what I'm seeing, Greg, is a lot of red after that. Just talking about.
Yeah, it's really where the year started to, I guess, follow its shape. Yeah, we were a really rollercoaster team. We obviously lost to Liverpool in the FA Cup at the end of February and lost to Bristol City in the middle of February and, kind of cruised past some of the games. Then we had that weird 5-3 with Huddersfield as well.
That was a strange game. I do remember that.
Yeah, and then, we thought we might have a chance of getting into that automatic promotion, but it really sort of became pretty apparently clear that our fate was the playoffs. And, it was fine. We accepted that. I think a lot of us came to the acceptance and realisation that the playoffs were a fun way to go, and maybe it wouldn't be so bad if we stay down in the Championship, which, in hindsight, was the right way to feel, right?
This is the problem. Would I trade it all for the day at Wembley and the semi-final, the playoffs? Probably. But the amount of pain that it has caused off the back of it, and what do we really have to show for it, other than a bunch of players that just look really sad a lot of the time? I don't know. I saw Ramsdale and Brie out, I think Harbour, all at the darts, and they seem to be having a nice time. So I don't know if you've seen those photos. Also saw a bunch of Twitter backlash that was like, we should be on the training ground. It's like, mate, it's
that's
Christmas.
ridiculous.
Like, come on.
I saw Ramsdale with Luke Littler, and I saw James Maddison getting a load of stick for going to the darts. Like, oh, you seen the form we're in? What are you doing at the darts? And it's like, well, because
what do you expect? Like, people,
like, I have a job and I do my job, but also I want to live a life and go and do things.
Very, very, very strange to me.
Like, oh, we're losing games. You can't be seen having fun. Is such a mad mentality.
It's like, you should just sit there and be miserable. Like, if I had to sit and be miserable every time something went wrong at our work, like, my lord, I don't think I'd ever be happy.
Or do you know what breeds a success and a good winning mentality, Zach? Is suffering alone in misery when you're losing.
You are not wrong, mate. It's slightly harrowing, isn't it? Really, but yeah, it was a weird end to the season. Like, we had three losses just before we managed to beat Leeds, and then obviously the actual playoffs, which were extremely boring.
We're going to get into the playoffs in part 2, but yeah, it was an up and down feeling, and it really feels like it's been that all season. There was the initial up and starting to cruise towards second, and then accepting the fate that third was our inevitable outcome, and in fact fourth in the end.
I think for me that kind of says it all in the some of the losses we had towards the end of the season. 5-0 to Leicester and stuff, and we kind of came back like, oh, it's fine, we'll be fine in the Premier League, and we've clearly shown that we are not fine in the Premier League. And even our former players who left, I think I was talking to you about earlier, like James Ward-Prowse is now on loan from his parent club who he'd spent a year at and has barely got game time because obviously they're now second in the table, and they were talking about potentially terminating his loan, and the outcome of the termination of that loan is, oh no, he's a really nice character to have about. And I'm like, he left supposedly to get English, like to play for England, right? And play for a bigger club, and now he is like, I don't know, being all jolly in the changing room for a team that he can't get into. And it's like, oh man, maybe our players weren't that good. Like, that's one of our best players that we had, that we were really worried was going, And then obviously now we've got to deal with an entire month of uncertainty of transfer speculation that has already begun, and it's literally the first today. Obviously, Ronnie Edwards went out on loan, which is good for him. I think I've been advocating that we really shouldn't have just decided to bank a talent and not do anything with it. But yeah, it's if that's sort of how the new year started, you look back on the last year as a whole, it's very, very bizarre because it is extremely, extremely up and down.
Yeah, and, it's easy to forget the rest of the angst coming into that period because it was definitely eclipsed by what happened next in the playoffs and some tremendous experiences. So let's loop back to that and talk about that more after a message from our partners at Zencastr. So here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Okay, so we got through the tumultuous period at the end of the season and ended up finishing fourth. Then comes an away day to West Brom where we stick ourselves out and escape with a 0-0 in I think it's safe to say a cagey game. I think that's how I would describe it. And then the build-up starts through the week, right? We see the buzz on social media. They're bringing the players in on a bus before the game. Let's try and give them a good welcome. And it just builds and builds and builds. And you could feel the atmosphere locally, right? Like, I'm a man who frequently wears a lot of my Saints shirts because it's what I'm most comfortable in. And I'd walk down the street in Eastleigh and everyone would be like, oh, are you going Friday? Are you ready? Are you excited? Like, there was just a buzz around the entire town and local area. And it was hard not to get caught up in it and feel the excitement and the anticipation. And it came to a crescendo. We see the famous clips of the the bus driving in through the red smoke, the flares that are definitely not allowed near football stadiums, but are used in all the video packages.
Interesting, that, isn't it?
What are your memories? Because obviously we went to the game together
Similar to that.
before we had a podcast.
You did, and I remember you when you were driving up. I don't know if you remember near the if people who live around Southampton who listen to this know what I'm talking about. There's the cigarette building, which is near in like sort of on the way into Southampton from Eastleigh, and there was some guys that drove past and then shouted out of the window. I think you were probably too busy driving, but me and your sister-in-law were laughing because it was just like shouting, "Up the buggies!" Like the top of their lungs. We're like, yeah. And then sort of like, I do remember being in the stadium and it was like, wow, this was like absolutely, it was like a pulse of an event. You could feel the pulse of like the weight of the event, and it was crazy.
I remember walking around the stadium and through the concourse, and it was just noise and positive vibes and noise, and it was just feeling and atmosphere and excitement and anticipation. It was really like nothing I've ever experienced, let alone experienced at St Mary's. It was just incredible.
I have no idea who I was stood next to you that day, other than you. It was sister-in-law one side. I was stood next to this random guy from the other side. And me and that man that day shared a bond, shared a couple of hugs. No idea what his name was. Never going to meet him again. But I'll always remember because it's like it shows you sort of, I guess, the good of football and the stuff where I struggle a lot, Greg, to explain to the people who are on the more nerdy side of the spectrum of my friendship group, like how football can make you feel. And they don't really understand. There's nothing in my opinion, like the nerdy culture when it comes to like going to a comic book convention or, playing video games or like, even if you get like a really good, there's nothing quite like the sort of buzz that there is at a sporting event. Like a big concert will come close, and like
big coming together of so many people with the same mindset and goal. Yeah, it's special. And my kids are young, 9 now and 6, and they were there at the game, and they still to this day talk about how amazing that was. So that is a memory that's going to live with them for the rest of their lives, and lock them in as Saints fans for their sins.
This is the thing, right? Like, and I think for that game as well, with it being at home and just the way that it was and the result and like the goals and the fact that it was 3-1, and I often forget it was 3-1 because there wasn't any noise when that last goal went in at the end, and it wasn't even a consolation goal at that point. Right. And obviously, there's like, we could talk about the pitch invasion, we can't, whatever. Like, people can make fun of it, but like, I think if you understood the height of the emotions at the time, you'd understand why.
It was just the spilling over of that atmosphere and the emotion, and it was inevitable.
Because the season before was miserable. And I still kind of feel like it's even more miserable than it was now, because like the vitriol that we had off the back of Hasenhüttl and Nathan Jones was nothing like what I'd seen even, when it got towards the end of Martin's reign, like, yeah, people were getting annoyed, but it wasn't like, I think the unifying, not hatred of Nathan Jones, but the unifying of like, please get this man away from our football team. And then just kind of the level of absolute deflation as Sellers won one game and then nothing. And it was just a slow decay. And I think like going up and coming back straight back down is not expected, but it's not as much of a come down as the previous time, right? Whereas obviously the previous time, we had experienced all of that. And then on top of that went into sort of a season where we started the championship horrifically and then fell into the groove and wasn't pretty, and then obviously the end wasn't the best, but like that was a culmination of like finally feeling something positive after such a long, what felt like a long period of time, despite the fact that it was like a year or so. But on top of that, I think a lot of people forget, like when you had COVID ball and people weren't able to go to the stadium and all that kind of stuff, like that would have had an effect and has an effect on the way that like people supported the football club. But yeah, I just don't, it's so hard to explain. I think I still almost prefer that game to the Wembley game, because I know you'll be like, hear me out, but there's a reason for this. And then, you got tickets. I was very lucky to get a pair of tickets through our workplace, and they're actually tickets that you won because you for somehow have like a 90% win percentage on every single ticketed event at our workplace.
No, that's the secret. Probably is that it's not a 90% win percentage. It's like a 9% win percentage, but I go in for a lot more than anyone else.
You go in for basically everything, but I think the thing with that was that I was sat quite a lot more corporately than I would have liked. So it wasn't exactly hospitality, but it was a lot of people who were kind of got tickets to the game but weren't really the level of fans. So it was just kind of me standing up screaming at the top of my lungs with like another fella like two rows down. And don't get me wrong, it was absolutely incredible. But there was, and I think the build up to the day of Wembley and everything around it was fantastic. But there was something where like my brain after the semi-final win buzzed for so long, like that aftermath of a high of like one of the best concerts ever, except it just carried on and on and on and on. Until obviously we ended up actually going to Wembley, and it's like, this is a bit mad, isn't it? Like we never kind of really expected it to end like that.
So surreal. And we're going to move on in section 3 and finish off with our memories from that day out at Wembley after a message from our partners at the Global Sports Podcast Network.
The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content from every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcasted in 5 different languages. This is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts.
Okay, yeah. So, we won. Will Smallbone scored, and that might really be the last thing I actively remember, other than just emotion from that Friday night. And then Wembley comes. There's the initial nervousness of getting tickets and trying to get tickets for like the rest of my family who only managed to come to a few games with me, and if I'm going to be able to, obviously me and my kids are season ticket holders, so we were pretty confident we were going to get decent seats. And then organising the trip up there and everything, but the buzz still continues to build, and I drove up. I think you got the train up, but the buzz was electric, and we got there early. I think we got there for the minute the fan zone opened, and it was just a whole day of festivity and merriment. It really
was. It was fascinating for me. So my wife came with me. She has been to 2 football games in her life. The previous game that she had been to was a 2-0 loss against Burnley. It was Kyle Walker-Peters' debut, actually. And we had to cross the Itchen Bridge in what I can only describe as torrential rain. She got in the car, and like even moving her jeans at that point, everything just squelched. She was the most miserable, and I didn't think I'd ever convince her to go again. But obviously, where we had the Eras tour coming up, it would be a good excuse to scout out Wembley. So she was happy to join me. But I also think that she was very aware of how much it meant to me and wanted to be there with me in that moment if it all did go well, which luckily, obviously, it did. But yeah, it was fascinating, obviously, getting on the train and obviously just packed with Saints fans, and my wife being like, oh, they didn't realise how busy it was going to be. And I'm like, yeah, I told you they put on extra trains and stuff, and having to run down and eventually getting off at Waterloo. And obviously this is the kind of bits that you missed, which is just all of a sudden at the top of like everyone's voice and singing Red Army, like throughout the entirety of Waterloo. Like my wife staring at me like, what have I gotten myself into? And I was like, you're going to be fine. Just embrace it. Enjoy the moment. And this is where she's like, I don't understand football. I was like, but you might after today. And I think she did a little bit, because obviously we ended up meeting you, finally got into Wembley itself. I spent, the afternoon in the fan zone, sort of building up. Oh, are we actually going to make it? Well, Leeds do like to bottle it in the playoffs. Oh yeah, but come on, like we did beat them the other week, but yeah, this is a different type of game. They've got so much, and obviously the game itself. And then as I said, my wife was absolutely thrilled. She had a little flag to wave, so
perfect. Yeah, so I bought a parking space in a local housing estate because I'm too cheap to pay for official Wembley parking. I mean, who isn't at the extortionate prices?
It means that you're not rich, mate, and I think that's fine.
But But we walked up through this housing estate with lots of other fans, including some Leeds fans. And it was just friendly, chatting away to the Leeds fans. There was no bitterness or vitriol. It was just everyone was in a great frame of mind. It was just amazing, party atmosphere from the get-go, and then working your way up to the seats, just the busyness and the buzz around the place. And obviously it was the Friday night in the playoff final was like concentrated energy, like in one localized zone, whereas at Wembley it's that same energy but just spread out across such a bigger plane of existence.
Yeah, it was so free. It was in the air. Like I'd laughing because I'd previously been to a couple of obviously gigs at Wembley, and I was aware this obviously out because the fan zone for Southampton was outside like the O2 stadium arena, whatever you want to call it. And I think one of the last times I've been there was to see like the Harlem Globetrotters or something really weird, which
amazing.
Is a fact that I've only just remembered that I've seen the Harlem Globetrotters, but there we are. And so like, and obviously
last time I was at Wembley Arena for anything, Zach, I met Hulk Hogan. So there's your interest.
Oh, all right. Well, that's you sure win there, mate. But yeah, and obviously, like you're sort of building up and obviously waiting for hot dogs. But it was like seeing people I hadn't seen for years because you will just bump into people and sort of I'm getting texts off from my family. They're like, "Oh, are you there today?" And I'm like,
the entire South Coast headed up, regardless of whether they had a ticket or not. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was, and then obviously, like eventually, it got to the point where obviously we were sat quite far away from each other in different areas. And then sort of you get into the stadium, and then it's in its nerves, and it's sort of jumping about, and then it's like having to point out, say, "Hey, look to Charlotte, like all of these people who are on Sky Sports News, look, they're all over there." And like having those sort of jokes, but then obviously like the game unfolds, and then all of a sudden just nerves take over. And Charlotte's just watching me, so it was like every emotion that I had was like tripled. And so I say that it felt different. I guess it didn't. It would have just been nice to have more people around me that felt the same level. And I think that by the time, obviously at the end, and we'd won, the second time Armour took his shirt off. When the whistle had actually blown.
One of my favourite clips of 2024.
So funny. And then you turn to look at the other side of the stadium and all of the Leeds fans have gone, and I don't blame them even slightly for it. And then just like sort of partying in euphoria for another 20, 30 minutes and being able to sort of enjoy it and soak it in and watching the sort of medals be given. And I think, you're right.
It wasn't just 20, 30 minutes either. Like
it wasn't.
It was the entire way home. You obviously got the train, so I'm sure there was a buzz. But driving down the motorway, there wasn't a single car that didn't have a red and white scarf flying, honking their horn and cheering as they saw you in your Saints shirts travelling down. It was unbelievable.
Very, very different. I think there's a couple of reasons why it's a very different vibe on the way home. Obviously, the tubes were absolutely packed and obviously everyone's kind of heading to the same place. So they were moving at like 2 miles per hour. And the thing is a lot of people who were on the tube, because they were no longer able to drink, the hangovers started kicking in really quickly, and people getting irritated and hot and sweaty. And I had to kind of like run with my wife to get the train, got like the last 2 seats on a train. Then people were arguing all over the shop, but I was able to sort of like put my head down and sort of just soak it all in and get home and just be like, oh man, that actually happened. That was insane. And then sort of, get all the texts off my family and people that watched it and bits and pieces like that. But yeah, it was. And I think that
and then there was frantic preparation, like getting a notification from the Saints app at 10 o'clock that night that they were going to do a party the next day, and then
because you went, didn't you? You went at like 9. I think I was so tired, like I was absolutely knackered because also the traveling about and stuff. I'm not used to doing that as much, and my wife certainly isn't used to like doing all that kind of stuff. So I kind of like woke up in the morning, not too worse for wear. I think I'd had quite a few beers throughout the day with you, but like I wasn't, in a state where I couldn't have done stuff. But obviously, I saw your message. You're like, I'm already out. I'm already at the fan zone. I'm like, sorry, what? And obviously, we got the footage on the social media instead.
Yeah, we got up stupidly early, refreshing the page to try and get these tickets that they released on the day. And they were, I think they were like £2 with the donation to the Saints Foundation, which was fair enough. we were sat refreshing the page, me and my sister-in-law, trying to get these tickets to go down, and we headed down to the stadium, and it was just a continuation. Like, everyone was still in that party atmosphere. There was just a non-stop vibe. It was great. There was music. Then the players came out, and the players were as drunk as everybody else. It was magical, and it was such a unifying moment that I'll just never forget.
I think it's for me. It's one of those things, and as I was trying to allude to earlier, like, it's really hard to explain if you don't like sport or care about sport, what sport can do to you as a person and like how it can make you feel. And I find that sort of the fact that as much as it's bad, we're in the situation we're in now, and as awful as it feels, we have not been in a situation, it hasn't been as bad as it was the time before, where we've dropped and then dropped again and then dropped again and dropped again. And we were able to kind of experience a moment of absolute euphoria and joy in the same year we've experienced what is at the moment looking to be the worst Premier League record ever. And it's kind of mad that you have to go through all of those levels of emotions in less than a year. But I think it also shows you the magic of why you can be so invested into a game. So like when I'm trying to explain these things to my friends and my wife and my family, like my mum is not a sports person at all. She doesn't understand it. Like she doesn't. And it's like, it's so hard to put it into words, because I'm like, if you could have felt all of what everyone felt through that period of time and what people feel now and why they're rightly annoyed and upset at the ownership and firing, but there wasn't any of those thought processes that went at the time. Everyone was purely sort of just off of vibes, whereas now everyone's trying to get a level head. But all of it comes from, I think, a place of a love for the game and a love for sport. And like, I don't think that you would end up having people with such a wide range of emotions. And it's absolutely mad that a couple of people on whether it's a football pitch or, an American football pitch, or like the way that F1 has seen a resurgence, it's the sport is absolutely incredible at what it does. And it is so hard to explain to people that don't get it what it's like when you have it.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
No, it does. It's the camaraderie. It's the way it brings people together. Like 3 years ago, when I finally got myself into a position to get a season ticket, and me and my sister-in-law started going along to the games, and then a year later, when we decided to start taking the kids with us every week, we just bought 2 seats to go and watch the football. And now, in our little area of our season ticket, we've got a whole community of people that we see every week and look forward to seeing and catching up with, and are like-minded and together-minded. And that's all part of the process and all part of it. It's the coming together of people with that like-minded aim that you don't really see anywhere else.
Yeah, you don't. I'll drag it back even further, mate. Like we work together quite closely now, but we had a period of time where we still worked for the same business. We didn't work in the same team. And occasionally me and you would go for breakfast on sort of a Wednesday morning, was the times we were in office. Every once a couple of months. We didn't really get to speak to each other as much. And then we decided to meet up sort of post-COVID, after the world started to open up again. We went to go and see, I don't know if you remember, we went to go see an Eastleigh game.
I do remember.
And they won 4-0. Like, it was the first time all season they'd scored or whatever. And then off the back of that, obviously, we started talking a lot more. And then obviously, once you started becoming a season ticket holder, you would like, the buzz of you wanting to talk would be like, well, who do I know that will actually talk to me? Because again, we work with a lot of people that just don't get sport either and think we're all insane. And then all of a sudden, like, our friendship has grown off the back of it. And it's obviously not the only part of our friendship, but it is a solid foundation because hence why we do a podcast together. But it's those kind of side of things that people don't see. They just see, oh, well, yeah, I don't understand how you can be so obsessed with a bloke kicking a ball around a field. It's like, because it's so much more, but a lot of people don't have like the words to explain it all, or the desire to sit and talk about it for 20 minutes, because it's just, I can't be bothered to explain it. And that's fair enough. And yeah, I think it is incredibly important. I think it can be, you can lose sight of it in horrible moments like now. And I can't remember I think I was talking to one of our followers on one of the social medias, and we were talking about a YouTube video by a creator called Stunt Peg. And she was looking into the protests that were taking place at Swindon Town, because Swindon Town are basically on course to drop out of the Football League for the first time. And sort of they were a Premier League club at one point. And it is like and people don't understand the impact it has on the community, on the people. And it's because like those sort of things and those investments it's so hard to, when people protest against owners because of what they've done to their club, it's not just the club, it's the community, it's the city, it's everything around it. And again, it's just a just absolute love and desire for sport. And I don't think anyone who would be listening to us ramble on about it for 30 minutes and almost daily would also do that if they did not feel the same. And I think it's, it is crazy how impactful it is. And that realistically, being a Saints fan, it has been the weirdest mixed year, but I would say a net positive.
Yeah,
because,
I've really enjoyed looking back on the positives in this episode. And
well, you would, mate.
Boy, I'm fired up.
Mr. 12th.
Boy, I'm fired up for us to take this positivity on into the new year.
Brentford lost today, mate. So, or yesterday from when you were listening. So,
yeah, you never know. To wrap it all up, there's one quote that I think quite nicely personifies what we've been saying. It actually comes from Bill Shankly of Liverpool legend and fame, not from a Saints background, but it really, I think, nicely sums it up. And it is, people say football's a matter of life and death, but I say it's much more important than that. So...
You're right. What I achieved in 10 minutes, he achieved in a quote. That is who I am as a person. But yeah, no, it's crazy. And you're right. It has been a overly positive episode for the both of us.
Yeah, it means no one's going to listen to it, mate. That's the only problem.
Don't be silly. I don't think that's necessarily the case.
For those of you who have stuck in there, listening to this positivity and looking forward to a new year of what it might bring for Saints. Hope that the new year brings you all good health and prosperity and at least more points than Derby. That's all we can hope for at this point, at least to start us off. Europe can come later.
There it is.
And we will be back tomorrow with our crossover episode with Brentford, and we will be looking forward to the game this weekend. Which is apparently coming up in this limbo period of who knows what day it is, but I'm sure we will we'll work that out as and when. So thank you very much for listening. As always, Zach, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, mate.
See you next time.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Happy New Year!